that assist those in schools like Liberty and Lynchburg College. I've always tried to support those, and I don't know that there's any retreat from that in the state system. I think it's important to remember that in the state, in Virginia, for instance, they balance the budget. So anything that's spent in the form of grants for students to go to college, I think that's done in the context of a balanced budget, and that's certainly their prerogative. And I think people recognize that higher education is very important and ought to be encouraged, and that's a way to do it. I have that same commitment at a federal level, but I think also it has to be weighed in the context of the federal balanced federal budget and whether or not we're spending $1.6 trillion that we don't have. So when programs are cut, I think all the programs have to be on the table, and I think that reducing support for Pell Grants and other things are things that we don't have a choice. We have to look at that. So I think everybody would agree that education is extremely important and that we need to encourage that. But by the same token, I think that everything has got to be on the table, and that's going to make it harder on everybody. But listen, we are paying for the students are not paying for mistakes that you've made. You're paying for the bad judgment of people who've gone before you in Washington, D.C. and set this table. Now we have to fix it, and we're all going to have to do it together. Thank you. Yes, sir.
You mentioned about federal employees and just government spending. Is it true that it costs more to shut down the government than to keep it open?
That's been said. I don't know. I can't speak to that with authority because I haven't studied it, but I have seen that reported. That as much as shutting the government down seems like it could just freeze spending, the cost of getting everything going again after it's suspended, and the fact that a lot of the things that weren't paid ultimately get paid anyway because of that it absolutely could cost more, and it makes sense that especially for a short shutdown that it would. And I will say this. Again, the budget deal that we saw for FY11, again, I was disappointed with some of the provisions in it. But I have to say that I don't think anybody wants to see the government shut down. We want to see the government run efficiently. We want to see it address the core needs of the people, and I think shutting the government down it's just terrible. I don't think anybody really wants to see that happen. So I think that's the case. Thank you. Got one more. Yes, sir. Right. Great, thank you. Great question. The question is whether or not the $38 billion that I think both sides agree is something that you can talk about, whether that really is $38 billion. I will tell you my concerns with FY11 budget, and let me tell you the good thing. The good thing about the FY11 budget is that ultimately it will cut $38 billion. I think that everybody agrees that it will cut $38 billion. The other thing that's good is that we're not talking about it anymore. Let's be clear about something. This FY11 budget was not the 112th Congress's budget. It was last year's Congress. They were supposed to get it done by September 30th, and they failed to do it. In fact, the House of Representatives did something they'd never done before, or certainly hadn't done in years and years, and that was they didn't even put a budget on the floor to be voted on because of the political inaction of the last Congress. And remember, the last Congress was controlled by the same party that controlled the White House, both houses, and they failed to come up with a budget, the most fundamental governing document of any government. So I think it's important to remember that. So we've moved on now to talk about, instead of cutting billions, we're now talking about cutting trillions. Now, to talk about FY11, and you may know this, I ultimately was unable to support that budget because I was concerned about a few things. I was concerned, number one, about the number. I would have liked to have seen us cut more than the 38 billion, than just 38 billion. You know, we had started off at 100 billion, and then that got reduced to 61 billion, and then that got reduced to 38 billion. And then there were some reports that it was 15 billion, and then if you break it down even further, there were reports that it was really only 315 million, which is what you, I think, properly cited. I think that the disconnect is a couple things. Number one, and this was one of the reasons that I was unable to support the FY11 budget, it was talking about one-time money. A lot of the spending cuts were one-time money. That is that it did not come out of the baseline budget for the next year. You can cut it for FY11, that is from the date that we adopted it to September 30th, but it doesn't do you a whole lot of good if that money grows back into the budget come October 1st for the next budget. I wanted to see long-term spending cuts, and unfortunately, a lot of that was one-time money. And then the second thing that I think caused a lot of concern, and it goes to, I think, to the heart of the question that you're asking, is that the 38 billion cuts the authority to spend. The 38 billion includes cuts to the authority to spend, not actual dollars that are cut. And I don't know if that makes sense, but that's a significant difference. So there were those who said, well, the truth of it is by the time you get to September 30th, the actual cuts, although you may have cut $38 billion in authority to spend, all you're really cutting is the 315 million. I can tell you that I think that problem is not necessarily a problem that's caused by our leadership in Congress. I think on the House side, that's a systemic budgeting problem. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's why people can't stand Washington, D.C., because you say one thing, but what it really means is something entirely different. And that certainly, that frustration was certainly reflected in my no vote on the budget. So I hope that budgeting process is something that we can work on in the future. I think transparency, clarity, all those things are things that have got to be put into our budget in the future and all of our policies. I think this new Congress is committed to that. I think our leadership is committed to that, and I think there are a lot of examples there. And I commend our leadership for the work that it did in trying to get us to this budget. But at the same time, I have to represent the people that elected me. I don't represent anybody in Washington. I got to vote based on what I think is expected by the people I represent, and that's why I arrived in the vote that I did. I think we're going to have to. Yeah. Well, I think you need to do what you're doing now. Get up early, work hard, and be engaged. And you know, I really commend you for the seriousness that that you brought to your task. I can't say it more strongly. The future of this country is ultimately in your hands, and you have a responsibility as people who have been literally blessed with the responsibility of being Americans, and I think your responsibility is to live up to those American ideals. And again, that's, you know, individual liberty, free enterprise, all those things that our founders stood for. And as I said before, every generation since that time has made that sacrifice. I'm reading a wonderful book called Bedford Boys. If you've not been to the D-Day Memorial in Bedford, it's not far from here. If you haven't been there, you need to go there within the next week and see it and consider the sacrifices that have been made so that we can all be here and live in freedom. It's extremely important that we all remember that sacrifice and remember that we have obligation as Americans to live up to that ideal. So I commend you. If I can ever be of service to you as you go forward, I hope you'll let me know. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with such a bright young group of people. I can tell you, I love doing this really more than any other part of my job because it's inspirational to be with the best and the brightest in the future of our country. So thank you.
Sir, we thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for all of our visitors for coming in for the wonderful questions. And I know that all of you are with me and will continue to join with me in keeping Congressman Hurt in our prayers and thanking him for this very hard work and for representing us well. Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Have a
This
great
has been
day.
great.
Stay
I
dry.
hope we do it again.
Absolutely. Thank you.